time for Inside the Sixers, Trifecta Therapeutics. Of course, my guys over there in Glassboro, if it's starting to get nice out, so you might be outside, you might be trying to play a little pickup hoops, you might be in your backyard shooting around, but when you haven't done anything all winter long, aches, pains, sprains, they happen. And if it does, contact the guys at Trifecta Therapeutics in Glassboro. They work with the pros and the Joes, trifectatherapeutics.com. Great team over there, can take care of you guys. That weather gets a little nicer. It's time for Trifecta Therapeutics in Glassboro. All right, let's get into the Sixers weekend. Flyers trade, by the way, they send Michael Raffle to Washington and Eric Gustafson to Montreal. So they're the two deals they make. Nothing major as we thought. We'll talk to Durso in an hour. Right now, Inside the Sixers, there he is. Paul Hudrick is back for the Monday edition of Inside the Sixers. Kind of an up-and-down weekend, Paul. I said Friday I'd be very disappointed to lose to what I think is a bad New Orleans team. Unfortunately, they did lose that game. I thought they really bounced back. I mean, sufficiently enough for me not to be as angry as I thought I would be.
Right. I would say, it's hard to take much away from either game because I agree with you that New Orleans game, there's no excuse for it. And they said that after the game. You have to win that game. That's not a very good team. Yeah, Zion is great, and he was great. He was unbelievable, as a matter of fact, and he's been really, really good for them recently as he's kind of taken on more of like a point guard role. But still, the surrounding cast isn't as good. I thought Joel Embiid missed a lot of shots that he normally makes. I know some people were kind of going on and on about, Steven Adams, because Steven Adams plays him physical. I didn't see that. I saw Joel Embiid, who has been unbelievable in the mid-range this year, miss a ton of mid-range shots. That's what I saw. And then other than that, I just saw a lackluster effort. And I thought Danny Green kind of put it perfectly. He said they thought they were just going to show up and win that game. And as we know, in the NBA, it doesn't work that way on a lot of nights. Now, Oklahoma City, I think they guys just showed up and could have won that game because that team is decimated. But New Orleans has enough guys. They're physical enough. They're young enough. They have enough energy that you can't go in there and play like that. So, yeah, I don't put a lot of stock into either of those games, honestly, Mike. I just, they split them. They have a chance to go 3-1 on the road trip. If that's the case, tonight in Dallas, and that would be a pretty darn good road trip considering they're just coming off that 6-game roadie right before it.
Well, if we don't put a lot of stock in those two, this is a week, Paul, where you got to put a lot of stock into it because now you're going to start seeing whether or not this team's a championship contender or not. I think this is an interesting week. You got Dallas is a good team tonight, Brooklyn, which is obviously everybody's been waiting for this game, and it's a meaningful situation. It splits the tie in their series. The Clippers on Friday, Golden State Monday, Phoenix on Wednesday, back-to-backs, not back-to-backs, but back-to-back games with Milwaukee. So these next 2 weeks, you're going to really find out what the ceiling of this team is, I think, the makeup of this team.
It's going to answer a lot of questions because, that 7-game stretch is going to be brutal. They play like you mentioned, three of the top 6 teams in the league, including Milwaukee twice on the road in a row. So you're just praying for a split, I think, in that scenario because that's really difficult. And I believe the Phoenix game is at home. Then you're in Milwaukee back-to-back. So that's brutal. But then after that, the last 12 games are pretty soft. So that's why these next 7 games are huge. If you can just, keep your heads above water for these next 7 games, play good basketball, and it's also going to be, I think, a little bit, like you said, a little bit of a litmus test. We're going to see how these guys kind of react. We're going to see, can Joel Embiid stay healthy and stay kind of stay in that MVP conversation? Because I think these next 7 games will go a long way in kind of determining that. Where is Ben Simmons offensively? What is Ben Simmons offensively? And how will he do against some of these better defensive teams? Tobias Harris has been so good, been a closer this year. How is he going to, look against those kind of teams? Because this is a guy also, kind of like Ben Simmons, has a lot to prove in the postseason, considering, how poorly he played last year against the Celtics and that he was really just okay the year before that. This is clearly a different player. We'll see if that translates to the playoffs. And then the bench, Mike, is such a big question mark, pretty much up and down throughout the entire bench. Lots and lots of question marks.
Definitely. And this 4-game stretch starts tonight. You can listen to the game on 97.3 ESPN. I guess some of the things, what is Ben Simmons offensively? And whether or not that translates to playoff basketball or not. I mean, what did you think of Simmons over the weekend? there was nothing like that stood out. He wasn't awful. He wasn't very, the game on Saturday night. I mean, he wasn't a big part of, but it does. If you were to describe Ben Simmons offensively for this year's team, what would it be?
Maddening, probably. Has probably been the best term. I mean, listen, he's, especially since the All-Star break, he's really offensively, he seems like he's really searching out there, and he's really looking for ways to become, to become a fit and then make it make sense. And it's ironically enough, the times he's looked the best offensively is when he's playing with Joel Embiid. So for all the years that there was all this hand wringing over, oh, can they play together? Oh, they need to trade one of them. Ben Simmons has been at his best when he's playing with Joel Embiid.
Yeah, I think I saw something over the weekend that they are the best tandem in all of basketball.
It's crazy to think about. And then conversely, Ben Simmons and Dwight Howard really, I mean, quite frankly, has been a disaster. It just has not worked out on either end of the floor. Doc Rivers keeps going to it, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why he keeps doing it now. And I really hope in the playoffs that's maybe a hole that George Hill can fill, where, in those Embiid-less, you pair Embiid and Simmons together and then Hill and Howard together. I think that's the way you almost have to do it, because it's just been so bad with Simmons and Dwight Howard together. And listen, both guys have played well in different stretches, but I don't think you can make it work, especially offensively. And yeah, with Ben, it's just, I think another ball handler in lineups is what he needs most of the time. I really liked actually what he did in OKC. Not necessarily, listen, I get it. It was against OKC. They're a bad team. And a bad shorthanded team for that matter. But him playing more at the 4 with Tobias Harris out, I thought he looked better, because I think he looks better. Like, Doc Rivers doesn't want to call him a traditional point guard. Okay, but you're playing him like a point guard. So let's just call that like we see it. So I would like to see him more in lineups with ball handlers. That's why I think George Hill is going to be such a big part of this. And I'm really eager to see what it looks like, because I think playing lineups with George Hill and Ben Simmons, especially down the stretch of games, the close games, I think could change completely Ben Simmons' role and his viability to play with a guy like George Hill.
All right. Well, I started with that, and then the fact that he hit a couple of foul line jumpers. I mean, that's about as far out as we've seen him, other than a couple of 3-point shots. But again, this is back to when he actually pulls the trigger on a outside jumper, they typically go in. I'm not going to say he's going to be a 75% shooter, but can that be something that he adds? And if he does, is that enough for him to add another, that you would say, wow, he peeled the onion and add another layer of offense to his game? Is that the next step?
I don't want to say that, only because we've kind of seen this movie before where he'll do it for a game or two, or he'll hit a 3 in a game situation. You're like, okay, maybe
he did it twice in the same game the other night. I couldn't believe it.
I know. And listen, I guess my big question for the situation is, did he do it because they were playing a bad team and he felt like, whatever, this is a bad team, we're going to win this game anyway, so let me just take a couple shots?
Oh, wait a second. Hold on a second, though. How many times have they been in games where they have big leads and you're just like, hey, we're up 25. This is the time to do it.
Right? No, I hear you. No, you're right. But I'm just curious. I'm curious if that's the case, that he maybe felt looser coming into that game. I'm hoping that's not the case. I mean, I'm hoping that this means, okay, I need to be more comfortable, especially like that. So if him and Joel Embiid want to run that little snug pick and roll action, which I think is a viable look for the two of them and can help, it's not like an option A thing, but it's something that can help them. And I think a look they can go to. If Ben Simmons can just hit that little, I don't know, like a 10-foot jump shot, like in that little spot, it could change that look. It can make that look even better. And it could make him more dangerous for sure. So, I don't want to get over, I don't want to get overexcited about him hitting a couple of jumpers. It's
Joel,
good. He
Joel
should
was
be doing it.
Joel was excited.
He was. Joel was excited. Listen, he took 3 of them. He made 2 of them. Sure, I would like to see him take more, especially if you're going to do it now. Do it in the regular season. Well, if you miss a bunch of them, it's okay, because maybe you figure it out by the postseason. You're hitting more of them, or if you struggle and you don't hit them, you put it back in your back pocket in the postseason. To me, it's a situation where I don't understand what he has to lose by doing it. But like I said, we've seen this movie before. I hope it's it's different and that it trends in another direction. But I guess we're going to get our first look tonight.
Yeah, unbelievable. So if you were to take something from the New Orleans game that would concern you moving forward, was there something? Was that just? I mean, obviously they didn't have much of an answer for Zion, but was there anything else that you're like, ooh, if that continues to be repetitious, that could be a problem? Or was it just a bad night against a guy who was playing really? Because as you mentioned, Zion has really kind of become more of a point forward, and I don't know that the Sixers really have a great matchup for him.
Yeah, I mean, that seemed to be the issue is that I don't think Doc Rivers kind of found the right matchup, but kind of until the end, it seemed like Danny Green actually kind of matched up against him best. Where, I mean, and that's to say he matched up against him like best, like between the options. Not to say he matched up well, but yeah, kind of, letting Danny kind of guard him on the perimeter, just kind of try to feed him into Joel into the paint. I think that seemed to be their best strategy, and that seemed to be when they kind of scratched and clawed back into the game. But like to your question about my concern, it would be just I thought Danny Green's comments were poignant. That this is still a young team, and they do stuff like this where occasionally it's been much better. You can't take want to give them credit for that it's been better than in years past. But the fact that they still have games like this every once in a while is a little troubling. Now, with that said, the Brooklyn Nets also just dropped a game with Kyrie and KD to the Lakers without LeBron and AD. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
they got blown out.
these things happen. It's a long NBA season. So I don't want to put too much stock into that. But the fact that these things linger every once in a while is slightly troubling. But for the most part this year, they've been good at being mature and taking care of business. And over the next 7 games, there's not going to be an opportunity for that because there's really no breaks.
All right, Flyers tonight, they take on Dallas. It's a very busy, interesting week. And you mentioned Brooklyn. They'll be here Wednesday night. And, of course, we'll have plenty on that one. It's a big game, too, because the winner of that game wins the season series. And then if they end up in a tie, that means whoever wins that game Wednesday night would be the 1 seed or the 2 seed. So it is a interesting game on Wednesday night. You're not going to see Harden in that game, and you're not going to see Kyrie in that game either, most likely, I would imagine. I think he's out for personal reasons for at least this week here. So the Sixers have an opportunity to get that one, maybe get some separation between them and the Nets. Paul will be back on Wednesday. We'll break that all down. They play the Mavericks tonight, and you can hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. And Paul Hudrick, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Paul, take care, man.
You too, Mike. Thanks, man.
All right, there he goes. Paul Hudrick, our Sixers insider.